Richard Bergen.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I congratulate my honourable friend, the member for Edmonton, on securing this debate, and thank, of course, the Backbench Business Committee for giving members time to discuss this in chamber. I'm pleased that so many have taken part, and of course it's a real pleasure to join the Minister opposite and to respond for the opposition front bench for the first time in the chamber in this important and topical debate. Today we've discussed a proposal which asks the government to consider suspending the further sale of its shares in RBS while conducting a review of the UK's financial sector and the case for new banking models. A very simple motion, and one that on this side of the House we all support. This discussion on RBS, the causes and consequences of its bailout, and now the Chancellor's ongoing plans to sell it off, with the cost to the taxpayer that results from that, has also been an excellent opportunity to discuss the future of RBS and of British banking as a whole, new models and structures that may be of benefit to the British economy, and the government must engage in this debate, as my honourable friend for Dagenham and Rainham so effectively set out in his speech earlier. We on this side of the House want to see a thriving and dynamic banking sector that will best deliver for the economy and the electorate as a whole. Labouring government took the decision to bail out RBS. It was a big decision, a £45 billion decision, but it was the right decision following the calamitous situation in RBS that my honourable friend from Norwich South outlined so effectively earlier. And it was justified, this decision, according to the National Audit Office, and it was at a price backed by the Institute for Fiscal Studies. But the scale of the bailout, the money invested on behalf of the taxpayer, means we cannot take a simple decision so lightly to return to business as usual. The Chancellor argued in his Mansion House speech earlier this year that the easiest path for the politician is to put off the decision. I believe it is he who has taken the easy decision. The easy decision to return, as I say, to business as usual. As the former Shadow Chancellor, my honourable friend, the member for Nottingham East, said at the time, taxpayers who bailed out the bank will want their money back. And he also said the Chancellor needs to justify his haste in selling off a chunk of RBS. Both of these points still stand. The taxpayers will still want the money back, and the Chancellor still needs to justify his haste. So let us be clear, we can't afford to get this wrong. And the evidence presented to us in the media this morning and by my friend the member for Edmonton from a poll by Move Your Money shows the public think the government is getting it wrong. 82% of those polled agree that, with their own interest, our own interest, the majority shareholder in RBS, it should operate in the public interest. And 58% believe the bank should be restructured to serve local economies throughout the UK. So it is incumbent on the Minister, I do want to give the Minister as much time as possible to answer if that's okay, so it's incumbent on the Minister and the Chancellor to set out why they are moving ahead with this sale and what evidence does the Minister really have that it's the right thing to do. This is the first opportunity for a full parliamentary debate on the decision of the Chancellor to privatise RBS since his announcement to the City at the Mansion House in June. The Minister did make a statement the following day, but it was clearly something of an afterthought to inform the House, as my honourable friend, the member for Easington, spelt out clearly in his speech earlier. At the Mansion House, the Chancellor announced a share sale, even if it meant a financial loss to the taxpayer. The 5% stake sold on the 3rd of August has already realised a loss of £1 billion, and some calculations suggest that the total losses, if the entire stake is sold in this way, could be around £13 billion, almost a third of the £45.5 billion total cost of the bailout. The government has provided no real evidence either of why RBS should be returned to the private sector in its previous form or why it should happen now. Mention has been made of a 13-page report by the Rothschilds Group and a 2-page letter from the Governor of the Bank of England. The Rothschilds report authors stressed that they have not sought to address the question of whether the government should sell its stake in RBS, but rather when it should do so. In other words, the review did not consider the full range of policy options. So can the Minister elaborate on how moving RBS shares from public to private ownership will promote financial stability, and whether the relevant Bank of England committee has endorsed this view? Will the Minister publish any evidence she has received in support of this view? It's welcome that the Honourable Member for Chichester, the Chair of the Treasury Select Committee, has asked to see the advice provided by UKFI in order to ensure that the taxpayer, as shareholder, is getting good value from this government-owned company. I support that call, and I'd like to ask the Minister today, is the timing of this sale in the interests of taxpayers or bank customers? Or does the Chancellor just want to sell off another state asset quickly to make his borrowing figures look better? Is this a decision being taken purely for ideological reasons or one based on expert independent advice? So can the Minister show how the Chancellor arrived at the decision? And in keeping with the call from my honourable friend, the member for Bishop Auckland, if the Minister has the evidence, will the Minister share it with members of this House? And I wish to turn to alternative models and structures for RBS and for the future of British banking, to ask the Government to consider a full review of UK banking that questions how financial institutions have operated both before and since the crash, and what other models we may want to consider that could diversify the sector and deliver for the country by strengthening the economy. And there's been much needed discussion on banking practice and reform over the past 5 years. Lawrence Tomlinson's report, Sir Andrew Large's report on RBS's independent lending, Sir John Vickers' independent commission on banking, the Parliamentary Commission on Banking Standards, and the work of the Treasury Committee itself, both with the excellent leadership of the Honourable Member for Chichester, to name but a few. But the questions we are discussing today, given how badly things went wrong and the problems that still exist with the bank, is how could we do it better? We need to know not only why RBS failed, but whether it is now delivering for the British economy. And if it isn't, how can we do it better? Labour was right to bail out RBS, but how has it operated since the government became the majority shareholder? RBS has been bailed out, but there are still major problems with its operation, as the Honourable Member for Aberconwy indicated in his speech. It has cut over 30,000 staff since 2008, often backroom staff on around £20,000 a year. It's currently closing branches faster than any other bank. 90 closures this year were the last branch in town. The Tomlinson report said in 2011 that returning RBS and Lloyds to full private sector ownership in their current form would be a return to the banking landscape of 2003, possibly with even less competition. Given the lack of any real change in the banking sector, there's nothing that will stop 2018 being the same as 2008 unless radical action is taken now. That's not my words, that's the words of the Tomlinson report. And the Andrew Large report found that RBS was failing SMEs. I remind members that he said that a perception has risen among some SMEs that RBS is unwilling to lend. And I do want to take this opportunity to touch upon how RBS has been treating businesses. This House will recall the backbench business debate on the 4th of December last year on the Financial Conduct Authority redress scheme, in which honourable members raised serious concerns facing businesses. For example, my honourable friend, the member for Liverpool Walton, stated that the only thing that is consistent and transparent is that the banks that caused the financial crash are profiting from selling products such as interest rate hedging products, which were bought by a company in my constituency, the Flanagan Group, and have caused it great difficulty. Similarly, my honourable friend, the member for Newcastle-under-Lyme, talked about one of his local businesses, DK Motorcycles, which in his words has been badly let down by RBS, but which in his words has finally escaped the clutches of RBS. The honourable member for Newcastle-under-Lyme in that debate talked about people from small businesses who feel bullied by their banks. Information that I have seen this week shows that the serious concerns of businesses like Flanagan's and others have not gone away. And given this, I'd like to take the opportunity of this debate to ask the Minister if she will meet with me, concerned MPs such as the Honourable Member for Liverpool Walton, and businesses such as the Flanagan Group in his constituency to discuss the behaviour of RBS and what can be done to resolve the situation. And that leads me, as I approach the end, to the question put so well by my honourable friend for West Bromwich West in his contribution of whether or not selling RBS in its current form represents good long-term value for the taxpayer, taking into account all the economic costs and benefits. Is the Minister aware of those who are saying the low price of RBS shares represents a belief among market participants that reforms to guarantee its future financial health have not yet been concluded? Is the Minister satisfied that all necessary steps have been taken to return RBS to a state where it will not be in trouble again? Finally, is it the case that the economy is best served solely by private shareholder banking, or is there a case for a more diversified sector that includes publicly owned and direct institutions, mutuals, cooperatives, social enterprises and regionalised banking? With so many fundamental questions yet to be answered, it's right that we engage with a wider review of the UK's financial sector that considers the case for establishing new models of banking which may better serve our economy. So, in conclusion, there are many alternatives. There have been proposals from a number of quarters that RBS be broken up to deliver regional banks in the Tomlinson report by the New Economics Foundation, Civitas and Res Publica, as mentioned by members on this side of the House. There's a discussion to be had on how regional banks may help to rebalance the economy, and perhaps the Chancellor took the opportunity whilst visiting Germany to look into that. It's our responsibility to map out the best way forward for UK banking to ensure it delivers for both the electorate and the economy as a whole. This means suspending sales of shares in RBS, which gives away taxpayers' money to private shareholders. It's incumbent upon the Chancellor to explain why the Chancellor thinks this is the right thing to do. This means engaging with a real review of the banking sector and alternative models that will deliver a diversified and more resilient economy. How we treat RBS now will demonstrate whether we have learnt the lessons of the crisis, the scale of the bailout, the money invested on behalf of the taxpayer.
I really hope he's reaching the conclusion of his conclusion, because we are way over time and we've still got a full debate to follow. So if you could finish his speech now, I'd be very grateful.
This means we can't take a simple decision so likely to return to business as usual. We, on this side of the House, want to see a thriving and dynamic banking sector that will best deliver for the economy and electorate as a whole. We don't accept the case has been made to sell off now at a significant loss to the taxpayer, and that's why we do support a full, independent review of all the options before any further shares are sold, and we encourage MPs to support this motion.